Okay, let me take just a minute to thank a number of people who have really played a critical role in helping us to pull off this conference. And there are a number of people, who I think it's really important that we thank that actually made this possible. First, I would like to thank our sponsors, other than the Blueprints Initiative. So at the what we call platinum level sponsors include FFT, MST, and MTFC. By now, I hope you recognize those acronyms for functional family therapy, multisystemic therapy, and multisystemic treatment foster care. But those are our platinum level sponsors. We have two gold level sponsors, Channing Beat and Prevention Action, and that at the silver level we have Community Solutions and Touchstone. So these organizations have helped us financially and sponsored this conference, so I just want to express my appreciation to them for that investment in the Blueprints Initiative. I would also like to thank the Conference Advisory Board. This is a group which have representatives from many of our Blueprint programs and some other agencies who have been working on this for an extended period of time, trying to work through all of the issues and the agenda, inviting keynote speakers and the workshops. Let me ask all of those who are on that Conference Advisory Board if you would stand so that we can recognize your work. Would you just stand, please? Thank you. We'd also like to recognize TRIO, who manage this conference for us. They have done that for us on all of our conferences, and they really do a fantastic job. So let's give thanks to TRIO. And let me ask if you would look in your binders, and in the front pocket of that there are evaluation forms. It's really important for us. How could we not have an evaluation? For you to give us an evaluation of your experience here, the workshops that you were attending, the keynote addresses. There is a box out by the registration desk that you can drop those evaluations in. So I would ask that sometime before you leave, if you would complete those evaluation forms for us. We really do look at them. So please fill those out for us. And finally, I want to take this opportunity to recognize Sharon Mihalik, who really runs the Blueprints Initiative. I'm just a figurehead. She does all of the management. She's terrific. We are really in for a treat. I think it's really appropriate that we have Steve Oss here for the final keynote for this conference, and I think it's a really fitting way for us to conclude to look at the possibilities that are there for cost-benefit analysis and how that information can be effectively used with respect to legislators and funders and policymakers as a way of integrating and implementing evidence-based program. Steve Oss is the Assistant Director of the Washington State Institute for Public Policy, which is a nonpartisan research agency that works for the legislature. I don't know of another institute that operates the way this institute operates in Washington. I've been there talking to legislators, and the legislators feel that Steve and Barney and others in this institute walk on water. They have really convinced them of the value of research and data to drive decision making. And I don't know of another place where we have something like that. So Steve has 34 years of experience in cost-benefit analysis. He's an economist, and he has been working in a wide range of public policy areas, as well as in the private sector. His current work focuses on identifying and evaluating the costs and benefits of programs and policies that reduce crime, improve K-12 educational outcomes, and reduce child abuse and neglect. So the range of outcomes that he's considering is a little broader than what we typically look at, but I think that's valuable to extend this particular approach beyond what we're specifically looking at. He has, in fact, I think, had a truly significant impact on policy and practice, not only in the state of Washington, but his influence has extended well beyond the state of Washington. He brings many years of work experience to this, and he also has a really dynamic way of presenting economic information. And usually, you know, when we hear economists, that's a really boring kind of presentation. But Steve manages to do a terrific job in explaining this kind of information in an exciting way which is readily understandable. So help me welcome Steve Oss.
I think I'll be okay. Thanks. Well, thanks everybody for having me here, especially the Blueprints people for this. It's great here. I'm sorry I wasn't able to be here yesterday. We had to do some things with our legislature. They're still in session there, and but it was fun to hear Karen talk this morning. I'm going to talk about some things that'll be kind of a little bit complicated, a little money kind of stuff, but really I'm going to talk about improve outcomes and save money. Improve outcomes and save money. That's what we're going to talk about, improving outcomes and saving money. I've worked for a legislature indirectly or mostly directly for over 30 years, and so I know that things have to be simple. We're going to do improve outcomes and we're going to save money. That's the way you get things done, at least in my legislature, is that, you know, things have to be fairly straightforward. The subtitle of this talk harkens to a little bit about what Karen talked about this morning. Picking them, passing them, doing them, and holding them accountable. It seems like that's like an old 1960s song. Picking them, passing them, doing them, holding them accountable. But anyway, that's what we're doing in Washington State over the last 10 years, or actually a little longer that we've been at this now. And some of what I'll talk about today is talk about that broad spectrum of not just finding the blueprints and doing the cost-benefit analysis, but what we've got in place in Washington to try to pull it off. Now, also to do a simple thing. This is what we're aiming to do in Washington. I'm holding up a copy of Consumer Reports. This is what we do. I don't rate digital cameras or lawnmowers, but I rate programs for a legislature. That's the idea. That's what the legislature has asked us to do. They direct us to do that in statute. And what they want is something that's like a Consumer Reports when they decide how to spend money on programs to improve some of those outcomes that Dell mentioned. So what I'm going to talk about in the first part of the talk is really what we've been doing to try to emulate what we all know as consumers, Consumer Reports. You turn to this because it's a nonpartisan group. You know, they don't take advertising. They rate things. They even rank things. You can go there. You can use it. Sometimes you use it. Sometimes you don't. But you go do that. This is really what we're talking about today. Only we're talking about the kinds of programs that we all like to do here. So a little bit about the institute that I work for. Dale mentioned a little bit there, but there's Olympia, the state capital of Washington. Washington's an average-sized state, 6 million people. Multiply that times 50, and you get pretty much the nation's population. There's the Seattle's up around the corner. You can't see it. This is at the bottom of Puget Sound. That's salt water there. And there's where the institute is. We serve the legislature. We're right there If you're interested in anything I say or you don't like anything I say today, you can find me at my house right there. If you're a Tea Party type and you get mad, you want to come and pick up my house, that's where I live. So there you are. You can come and see me. So it's important, I think, to show where you live and where you do the work, at least it is from my perspective here, because what I'm talking about today, a lot of times I read academic journals to find out what works or not, but what really matters is what goes on in that state capital. And that is in part driven by works and research evidence and dollars and cents, but there's a whole lot of other things, of course, that dictate what comes out of the state capital like Washington State. So it's important to kind of keep that place in mind. The Institute is a nonpartisan research arm of the legislature. It was created about 27 years ago, late in a legislative session as things were winding down. They decided let's just start a little research institute. All of the projects, including the ones that I'll be talking about today, come to us from assignments from the legislature. The legislature will write a bill and pass the information off to us, and we go forth and do the work as a result of that. We have a mostly legislative board of directors, but the governor also has 2 people that she appoints to our board of directors. In general, the questions that our legislature has been asking us are the what works questions and even the what's cost beneficial questions, sort of a second order test. Return on investment for taxpayer dollars. Improve outcomes, save money. That's what we've been asked to look at. Here's some of the assignments that we have. I hope you can see those in the back. Those are the outcomes that currently or previously we have been asked to look at by our legislature. Crime is an outcome, early childhood education, K-12 education, child abuse and neglect, and so on. And I've written there the dates, if you can see those, of the specific directions from our legislature in the form of a bill, a study assignment to the Institute to basically do what works in those different areas. We have a lot of work that's underway right now, and will be coming out this session. In October, we'll be having a major updating of our work for the legislature going into the next legislative session, and even a bigger report due next June. So we're undergoing what I'll be talking about today and updating all the evidence. Today I could talk about any of those things there, but I'm going to focus on the crime outcome and give a few examples of where Washington has gone in picking them, passing them, doing them, and holding evidence-based programs accountable to achieve crime reductions. So in general, when we get asked to do a study on any of those topics there, we follow a 3-step process. And we've gotten increasingly good at this. We keep trying to get better at doing this work, but this is part of doing the Consumer Reports things. The first step is just to do a formal assessment of what works and what does not work. So it's a little bit like the blueprints. We get together, we gather all the research evidence that we can find that's been done anywhere in the world. We just have to be able to read it. And what we're trying to do here is to figure out what works and what doesn't work to achieve those outcomes so that we can pass that advice on to our legislature. We try to gather all the studies we can, the ones that get published, the ones that don't get published, anything that we can get our hands on. We do require, and we have some standards about the rigor of that evidence. It has to meet a certain standards in order to even get into the mix at all to be considered. And we also particularly like programs that are real world, because we're talking about implementing things in the real world environment of the state of Washington. So that's what we do. Then we kick it up a notch. Like Emeril in cooking, we kick it up a notch and we say, well, let's do some economics too. This is when I get excited. You find out what works, but everything costs money, and so what you really want to know is where do you get the best return for your dollar? How much do these programs cost? How much benefit do they generate if they're achieving reductions in crime or child welfare or improvements in K-12 outcomes? So we perform a consistent cost-benefit analysis across a wide range of programs using a model to consistently, again that word, estimate what the benefits and costs are of different options. And then we kick it up one more notch. This is the third notch, and we're just starting to get good at doing this. Many legislators like lists of what works. Some of them like it. Some of them even more like lists of what works and ranked by benefit and cost. But what they really want to know is what's going to happen to the high school graduation rate in the state, both for doing the assessment, by the way, and doing the programs as well. And then finally, funding formulas. Karen mentioned this also a little bit this morning. With the right incentives, it's one thing to drive the money out to the juvenile courts in our state, which are county-run in the judicial branch of government. It's how you drive it out. It will influence, at least on the margin, how some court members want to play the game or not play the game. So all those things become important. And you need to think about all of those kind of boring doing them steps once you've got a portfolio of programs that you want to go forward with. Finally, holding them accountable. We want to keep track of these investments we've made. We've gone through all the pain of going through a portfolio approach, funding a substantial amount, getting risky, taking that prison off, now having to worry about can we actually deliver on the programs. And the key result, as I mentioned earlier, is that we now tie those investments directly to our official state prison forecast that comes out once a year. And in fact, during the course of a legislative session, when the legislature wants to either expand the evidence-based programs or contract them, they get an immediate prison impact statement that goes along with that. We calculate what the effect would be on the prison, and this last session was all about cutting budgets. And there was proposals to cut the program funding for some of the programs. And so we had to, as a normal part of the process in Olympia, produce a prison impact statement that showed that prison impact beds would go up, and those programs survived the cuts. So that's part of the process. We also have some comparison group outcome evaluations underway, and there's some very encouraging signs. I don't have statewide numbers yet to point to, but there's some very encouraging signs that we're continuing to keep our crime rate down, and we're starting to turn the corner on that total cost thing. So we're starting to improve our outcomes, reduce crime for less cost, and that's the goal that members have been looking for. So summary, just a little bit about what we learned and sort of where we're heading with this effort, this 10-year effort or so and 12-year effort in Washington. We actually learned that you can do it. You can do it. You can do consumer reports. Technically, I think we can do it. We're getting better at doing it all the time. There are always ways to get better at doing this, but I think we've gotten it good enough now that we can produce a consistent result for our legislature, and that the legislature has then also gone ahead and tried to figure out how to use these results. I will point out that doing the numbers, doing all the quality assurance, it's maybe half the problem. Getting something through a legislature, it's half the challenge. Public policy, if I've learned anything after all these years, it's a people business. It's one-on-one. It's trust. Does Senator X trust me? And all the other pressures that legislators are under. Evidence may be successful and help rule the day half the time. It's sort of like a baseball player. We just started baseball season, right? And if you're 33% successful, 1 out of 3 times you're successful over the course of your career as a baseball batter, you'll go to the Hall of Fame. You'll be one of the best baseball players ever. Just being successful 1 out of 3 times. Imagine that. You go to bat every night, you go to that knowing you're going to fail way more often than you're going to succeed. But that's and the odds are, I hope, a little bit better in the world of public policy, but you can't expect perfection. You can't just hope to do the numbers and expect that everything is going to happen in the public policy process. That's not the way it works. But if you can get your success rate up to 50% and you're happy with that, as I am, then you feel like you're making some contributions. And then, as I say, the thing that I find most encouraging is that we're now starting to take it to the ultimate level of driving the state budget. In this case, by the example I've given today on prison, but you can also imagine early childhood programs that reduce the need for grade retention in the K-12 system. We want to drive that right into our state budget as well, so that if we're doing early age prevention programs that's reducing the need for special education, as we think they are, or grade retention, that we're actually seeing those results in the state budget process as well. So there's our reports. They're boring. I know I'm good at it. I've done it for 34 years. I know how to write boring-looking government reports. There it is. It's not too boring, but it's a little bit boring. But you can go to our webpage and find it. But this is what it really is. There's consumer reports. There we are. This was the annual auto issue, exclusive reliability ratings, more than 1,100 cars, and so on. Let's just kind of do some things here. Let's annual criminal justice issue, exclusive ratings, over 200 crime-related programs and policies. Let's get the cars stuff out. Let's put in best 2010 crime policy. That's the state capital of Olympia right there. Top picks, unbiased ratings and reviews of 222 programs, best and worst programs. Don't get ripped off. Save taxpayers thousands of dollars. Best programs that reduce crime and save. That's what our report is. I didn't want to get fired, and I didn't want to get sued by Consumer Reports, so I opted for the boring-looking thing. But basically, it's that kind of report that we're trying to do with our legislature. We've been successful in a couple of areas. Those are some of the areas where we've done it. We've done some things that haven't been successful. We haven't been terribly successful in K-12 education, although we've done this information. But these things take time to build. We'll get successful there. It took us 4 or 5 years just to get the process rolling, and we're really rolling now in the case of crime and a little bit in child welfare, and we'll get there in K-12 education as well. So in the meantime, I really appreciate being a part of your activities today, and look forward to talking to you more. Thanks.